There's been a series of interviews at various gaming sites like GameSpot, Noisy Pixel with Toshihiro Kondo, the current president of Falcom, and it's about the future of Falcom in their various series. That is obviously the East series, Trails, and other series like that. I'll put a link to the GameSpot interview below, as I think it highlights a lot of really interesting things that I'll be touching on in this video. In the interview, Kondo said about the future of Falcom that he'd like to move to different genres and types of games. For any longtime Falcom fan, you know they used to do that a lot, actually. With a series like Xanadu, which is like top-down kind of dungeon crawling sort of experience, also side-scrolling. Then you have like Lord Monarch, which is a strategy game. You have Brandish, Dinosaur, which are more dungeon crawling games. Falcom used to dip their hands into a lot of different kinds of IP, and Kondo has said that the Trails series is beginning to come to a close. So he said that I think 80 to 90% of what he wanted to do with Trails is done. There might be a single arc left, and they don't expect Trails to continue into a 30th anniversary. He also went into a bit about Atlas and how they aren't afraid to try a lot of different things and how Falcom could do the same. So let's dig into that a little bit. My personal feelings about it are, it's a great thing. I think that Falcom as a company has a lot to offer, and a new IP from them or jumping back into one of their old ones would be very welcome. I think that they've been doing East and Trails for a long time, so, you know, it might be interesting to see them do something else. I'd probably prefer them to try something entirely new, though for a smaller company like theirs, I can understand it would be a bit scary, you know? Kondo said that they're doing pretty well, but staying afloat means each game needs to do well. So trying something new, of course, means that it could bomb, or at least not do very well. But I personally think fans of Falcom will buy almost anything that they do, which is a good thing. Of course, that has some limits. I would expect anything coming out of Falcom to be an RPG of some sort, for example. I don't really care too much, personally, what kind of RPG is. I'll definitely give it a try. I can't imagine them, for example, jumping back into Lord Monarch, as interesting as that would be. If it were the case that they could do that as like a side project or something, I'd definitely be interested. But taking the company headlong into that direction would probably not have as many people on board. Let's look at a few different projects that Falcom has done over the years so we can get an idea of the kinds of games they could be possibly looking into making. We have, of course, Gurumin, which is like a lighter action RPG, and you could see as more marketing to younger audiences. Definitely a fun game, but probably not something I see them going towards again. In a similar vein to Ys, we have the two Zwei games, the Ilvard Insurrection and the Argus Adventure. The difference to Ys is that these were a bit more based on character swapping than the Ys games of the time, which is interesting because since then a lot of the Ys games have actually adopted that mechanic and expanded on it. Zwei also had a different feel to it with charming and vibrant characters, even more out there than the Ys series. It kind of feels like the bridge between Gurumin and Ys. Could be fun to get another game in the Zwei series. I don't know if they sold particularly well, and I think developers at Falcom have expressed an interest in trying something a bit more dark than their current series, something more mature, which Zwei definitely doesn't fit, so I don't know if I necessarily see them going there. Brandish, on the other hand, probably does fit that mature mold, but it is probably inherently a more niche series due to the type of dungeon crawling game that it is. It's more of like a traditional grid-based dungeon crawler. Not sure I see them going more niche than they already are. They probably don't want to do that, right? So at this point, we've done the dance through a bit of Falcom's past. I would say the most likely thing I would see them doing is an entirely new IP, which could be potentially very exciting. But we do have to keep some things in mind. Falcom is almost certainly limited in their ability to create. And what I mean by that is they won't be able to achieve the graphical fidelity of like AAA counterparts that they have in the industry. So we're pretty likely to see them continue to use the engine that they've been working on for some time. That would be the engine that they've used for both the Trails series and the East series. But we have seen them create a game adjacent to those in more recent times, Tokyo Xanadu EX Plus. So I mean, they could make a Tokyo Xanadu game. Not sure that would be the direction they would go. If they want to take things a bit darker and more mature, I'm very curious to see where they would go. We've seen just how popular that sort of thing can be. Take, for example, the recent success of Elden Ring. That definitely goes into some very dark places in a way similar to like Berserk. And it isn't like Falcom have never tried injecting mature themes into any of their games. The Trails series has plenty of moments that go there, with character deaths, some pretty horrifying revelations for the experiences of some characters. I think they've proven their capacity to deliver those ideas already. I'm pretty curious to see the potential package that an entire, more mature-themed game from Falcom could take. Since the Trails series would be coming to a close within the next 10 years, I would imagine they might want to take that step into another RPG series. There's definitely plenty of room to maneuver when it comes to that sort of series. By that, I mean there aren't a ton of JRPGs that have gone that direction. The most obvious example would be Final Fantasy, really. The latest game took on almost a Game of Thrones-like style, which honestly I'm not sure I personally thought was done the best. It was a fine game, but I feel like Final Fantasy has been missing the mark of greatness for a long time, and they've settled more into good enough territory. Xenoblade definitely hits on some pretty hefty themes. Similarly to Persona, it kind of drifts on the edge, bouncing back and forth between these really hefty, mature themes and more lighter moments. I think Falcom could find a nice place to nestle into that. Depending on how they do it, it could elevate their studio even higher than it already is. Falcom is one of the most legendary Japanese game developers out there, so I think they deserve to hit high marks of success to reflect that. And what I would want is something a bit more traditional from them, not necessarily in combat mechanics. I'm thinking epic scale, explorable world, not open world necessarily, but they've shown with games like Ys 8 that they can kick the scale up a bit. They could even do like an old school style explorable world map, something that we saw in Ni no Kuni. Bring me back to the era of big adventures. I'm thinking Lunar, Grandia, Xenogears. You could definitely make something like that with a Falcom-sized budget that feels incredible. It doesn't have to be the latest graphical fidelity. It could just be really epic scale, you know? One other thing that Kondo has talked about recently is the upcoming announcement of some sort of remake. He hasn't said exactly what that is, so that has sent me into speculation mode, of course, and there are a lot of different Falcom games that could possibly be remade. It isn't like they haven't done something like that in the past. Just look at their older games. I think Xanadu and Sorcerian have like a dozen different versions between the two. He did also mention Ys 5, so it could be the case that Ys 5 gets a remake. Again, not something that hasn't been done before. Ys 3 got a remake in the form of Othin Falgana, which is an incredible game, so why not do that again? Don't really see any downsides to that. So I'm curious to hear what other people would want. Where do you think Falcom should take their games in the future? Do you prefer a return to older franchises or something completely new? And what Falcom game would you like to see a remake from? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.